In all of the cardiac cowboy craziness and excitement of yesterday, we didn't even get to talk about the Cowboy 2025 National Signing Day class that will now officially be the first class in the rebuild.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Oldeo State. Today, we are entirely brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get to shift gears into the National Signing Day class that now officially will be the first class in the rebuild of Oklahoma State University football. The 2022, 23, 24 class are obviously going to be the foundational building blocks to set forth for these guys to be part of the rebuild. And I think that could be one of the most exciting parts about this is given the circumstances around Oklahoma State coaching and how the season ended and going over in conference play for the first time under the Mike Gundy tenure, all of that obviously was going to add a little bit of trepidation to this signing class. But somehow we were able to pretty much keep all of it intact, minus Jet New. As we've covered, I think he's going to be a really good quarterback eventually, but it's going to take a couple years of collegiate football. There's going to be some guys within this class, much like some of the guys last year, like David Kabongo and Landon Cleveland and Josh Ford, that are likely not going to need an overabundance of time to get ready to rock and roll. So let's go over some of this class. On 3 did project us or bump us into the top 50 at number 48 out of the top 50 recruiting classes in the country. 247, which is primarily what I typically use. They weren't so generous, but they were pretty daggone close, right around the 57, 58 range, which is not where Oklahoma State football should be in recruiting. We can all agree with that. But when you look at it, we do have some 4-stars mixed in here. A 247 4-star that was bumped up recently is Carl Albert's own Carl Vion Young, the 6'4", 215-pound linebacker out of the Oklahoma City area. His recruitment basically just exploded out of nowhere, a composite rating of 91, which would be one of the highest that we've had in quite some time. His entire recruiting process just basically blew up overnight. He went from a relatively obscure individual in the recruiting realm because of an ACL injury and some surgeries that he had this previous season. So really, a bulk of this all came off of the senior season highlights. And we, luckily, were able to swoop in here and get him to become a Cowboy and stay in home. You guys know how I feel about in-state guys and legacy guys. Another 4-star on a different service, I think it was On 3, that had Michael Riles as a 4-star. This individual is very special. And whenever you look at him, 6'3", 235 pounds, he was somebody that I honestly thought we were going to have a difficult time getting, let alone maintaining. Now, I've had some back and forth with Mr. Riles, and it was about the Texas A&M and kind of talking crap. This was after the bowl game last season, and he had a bunch of Texas A&M stuff all over his page, wearing A&M gear. So I assumed he was going to be an A&M guy. I think Texas A&M also thought the same, and then he switches to Oklahoma State and chooses us over Florida, Georgia Tech, Mizzou, Nebraska, TCU, Texas, Texas Tech, UCF, USC. The list goes on and on and on. The fact that he stayed committed to this class is a phenomenal ordeal for us, and it's a big deal because I thought if anybody was going to be reluctant after seeing this season, it might be somebody like a Michael Riles, who, again, is another 4-star in one of the many publications. And then we had an additional 4-star at one point in time with 247 Sports and Jalen Beckley. Jalen Beckley was one point in time committed to Clemson. When he was committed to Clemson, he was definitely a 4-star recruit. Once he switched to Oklahoma State, something changed for whatever reason. But nonetheless, this is an individual that we know is going to be able to provide a significant amount for Oklahoma State specifically, and he's one of the catalysts that kept this class together. I think you have to throw a Royal Capel into that mix as well. Royal Capel is going to be a wide receiver at a Sabillo Steel in Texas. This dude comes in 5'10", 195 pounds, and he's kind of the epitome of what you want out of a Cowboy wide receiver. We've seen Marshall Levinson cover him multiple times. He did an interview with him, and he stayed loyal to Oklahoma State, and he started promoting us as much, if not more than even Jalen Beckley. Then you have to continue this conversation with yet another 4-star by On3 Sports, and that is Chandavian Bradley, the number 6 overall ranked JUCO player in the country, according to 247. He's the number 1 linebacker, according to another publication. Regardless, the 6'5", 235-pound defensive end that originally was a high 4-star Missouri Player of the Year, went to Tennessee, didn't quite work out at Tennessee, went the JUCO route. We now get to be the beneficiaries of having another Colin Oliver-style guy be able to slide in pretty seamlessly. Then you got to continue talking about some of the biggest gets of this class. And I think Kobe Foreman is an individual that we plan to play on the defensive side of the ball, although he can definitely do the daggone thing on the offensive side of the ball. So it'll be interesting to see where he kind of shakes out. But this is a 5'11", 175-pound cornerback is what I think that he's going to kind of be projected for Oklahoma State. But we were able to get him over offers from Baylor and Houston and TCU and Texas Tech and SMU. I give SMU a hard time, but realistically speaking, they had a phenomenal season. So maybe I should back off a little bit here. Another big-time get in this class is going to be Cameron Powell out of McKinney North in McKinney, Texas, is a 6'1", 205-pound wide receiver. Whenever you're looking to fill some of the coffers of the guys that we know we have leaving, like a Brennan Presley, like a Rashad Owens, obviously you saw Dejon Stribling walk during senior day, so he's going to be somebody that we need to pay attention to. But we talked about him earlier before the Arkansas matchup because this was one of those things that was going to come down to likely Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Arizona State. We were able to kind of, persuade him to become a Cowboy, even with some of the limitations that we knew we were going to have, especially with some of the limitations that we thought could potentially pop up offensively. The fact that we worked around those and we kept this class together is absolutely insane. Then you have DJ Duger, if you want to talk about the running back position, another 6 foot, 205-pound individual out of Leander, Texas. The running back position is going to be kind of weighed to some degree by the Ollie Gordon decision. Of course, everybody does, in fact, expect him to take his talents either elsewhere or to the NFL. Hopefully it's to the NFL. But this was another individual that came down. His final 3 were Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and California. He also had Houston and a couple other Big 12 schools in the mix. So this is going to be somebody that we know we could potentially rely on in the developmental department. While we have some running backs that can do the darn thing, I think it would be a travesty to see Trent Howland go. But I also understand that there was some certain conversations that were had before the season started that maybe didn't go swimmingly. Now we get to talk about somebody that I have seen physically play the game of football in a 7-on-7 setting, and that is going to be Drayden Fulbright. Drayden Fulbright decided to go with Oklahoma State over Florida State, Boston College, amongst many others. And he kind of popped up late as far as Oklahoma State is concerned. But he has a lot of athletic ability. He also runs track. He's a qualifier in the 200-meter. He runs under 22 seconds. He can do a lot of things with the ball in his hand. But realistically, I think where he fits in the most is his ability to get downhill and cut off angles for wide receivers. That was the thing that I noticed most, is sometimes it looks like he's losing ground in coverage, but in the blink of an eye, he almost deceptively fools guys into thinking that they're open. He does that to also fool the quarterback to thinking that the dude's open, but he has a very unique way of kind of undercutting routes and allowing people to get to the spots they want, but also cutting it off a little bit shorter. He doesn't really allow wide receivers to get up on his heels without a proper back pedal, sinks his hips really, really, really well. I think this is going to be a phenomenal get for Oklahoma State defensively. Let's continue this thing with a wide receiver, Matrell Lopez. Now, we've covered him previously, being an Okie. Talk about, I think I gave him the nickname King of Elusivity. 5'11", 175 pounds. He chose Oklahoma State over Washington State, UTSA, North Texas, Tulsa. So maybe the offers list wasn't going to blow everybody out of the water, but this is somebody who we identified very early on, and we knew if he could, basically fill the role of a Brennan Presley within the offense, this is going to do miraculous things for Oklahoma State moving forward. I think the same needs to be said in Jaden Perez. If Matrell Lopez is the king of elusivity, then maybe Jaden Perez is Mr. Miss You in a phone booth, because his change of direction instantly is amazing. This is another dude that we were able to get over Arkansas and Baylor and Kansas and Houston. Of course, you're going to have some other schools mixed in there that cause a lot of people to take notice, like Tulane and Texas Tech and TCU. Sometimes it's difficult to steal some of these dudes out of the backyards. And now we have an offensive lineman. I'm going to mess this name up, most likely, but it's nice to continue this this connection that we have in Utah. Thank you, Benny Tonga, for Simona Fuel Etelo. I knew I was going to murder that. I'm sorry, sir, for murdering your name, but thank you for choosing Oklahoma State over Cal, Florida, and Kansas State, just to name a few. Now, I haven't seen film on some of these individuals, so I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Let's jump to Jalen Beckley. Now, we do know from an offensive line perspective, we got some dudes going out, so this is going to be a good time to fill them in. Same with Jalen Beckley. Jalen Beckley is again, a friend of the show that I think is going to be instrumental to being a part of the Cowboy culture, the restoring of order, and the transitionary period from being in high school to now college. Aiden Webb, Lake Highlands, Dallas, Texas, 6'2", 165-pound safety. This was an individual that you looked at Oklahoma State very early on and was pretty dead set on becoming a Cowboy, even though we had to fend off Pittsburgh and Houston and Kansas. I think whenever you're thinking defensively, Coach Hammerschmidt has never had an issue getting the most out of the safety room. Now, if some safeties are going to bulk up and potentially make moves, I'm a fan of it. But I also like that Aiden Webb can do a little bit of both. If you need him to slide out to play some corner in an emergency situation, he can do that. The versatility is there. The relentless pursuit is there. The effort is there. And he's been a Cowboy commit for quite some time. Rashad Bradley, we covered him a couple days ago, so we won't get too bogged down. But this is that 6'3", 250-pound defensive end who is the number 3 ranked defensive end in all of JUCO, coming out of East Mississippi Community College. Rashad Bradley, he's going to be able to provide a spark that we're going to need at that position spot. A late flip from UNLV is Miguel Chavez from Muskogee, Oklahoma. Interior offensive lineman, 6'3", a little over 300 pounds. Yeah, this is somebody that falls perfectly for what we're looking for, coming from the Levy Adcock system, former Cowboy offensive line, great. So this is a pretty seamless transition, I would imagine, for Mr. Chavez. Same could be said about Riker Half, another individual who's been committed to Oklahoma State for a long time, almost 6'6", a little over 310 pounds from Owasso, Oklahoma. He was somebody that when you see guys like Blake Cherry making other decisions and the high-flying quarterback make decisions outside of the state, maybe you have some reluctancy. He didn't waver. He didn't seem reluctant at all. He stayed loyal and true the entire time. Same can be said about Jordan Viborni, another Utah connection that, realistically, if he didn't tear the ACL, this is probably somebody that we have a difficult time getting. But the fact that we got him was absolutely phenomenal. 6'5", 230-pound tight end. He's going to be huge for the future development of the position. And now that we know we have some changes offensively, it'll be interesting to see who we bring in to coach the tight ends, or if McIndoe's going to, stay there. I don't know. What we shall see. Then you have Chase Pinkston, cornerback out of Jones College, 6'1", 175 pounds. The most interesting thing about Mr. Pinkston, other than the fact that he's obviously very talented, had almost 40 tackles in just 1 year this previous season, is his dad, is Todd Pinkston, who spent years in the NFL, who's currently coaching in the NFL. So this is another one of those individuals where I kind of like why I love some of the big-time legacies. They just have access to some of the training that nobody else in the country gets unless you're already at the collegiate level. So that is the bulk of the class. And then we also did have Kason Carpenter, another Tulsa guy to come over. We did also offer Tulsa tight end, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But this is a pretty good class. I know numerically speaking, it's not going to, wow everybody. But you've got 4 4-stars, including the one Chandavian Bradley JUCO 4-star, mixed into the bunch. If you look at the guys who played this last season as true freshmen, more often than not, they were as good as, if not better than, some of the upperclassmen that we already had playing on the field. If there's any indication that we're going to have, some of the younger guys continue to be the catalyst for the rebrand and the rebuild, there's going to be guys in this group like Kabongo, like Cleveland, like Ford, like Jonathan Agumidu, that are all able to play much earlier than anticipated. Another one of those is going to be Jacoby Oliphant. We've already got young guys that are excited for the future of Oklahoma State football. And now that you can factor this group into there, knowing that we've got some dudes that have the ability to play as true freshmen, it should make everybody a little more confident that the talent level at Oklahoma State is not going to fall off dramatically anytime soon. If anything, it appears to be trending in the right direction. You need to trend in the right direction too with your bank account. It's FanDuel season. If you're a fan of the NFL Cowboys, then you have a lot to get excited about when it comes to FanDuel. Now, I know this season for us specifically didn't do much in the hammer the over department, but that's okay because Tylan Wallace has us covered. Justice Hill has us covered. Jalen Warren has us covered. You need to get started with the best opportunity to get $150 back in bonus bets right now for all new customers. This sportsbook app is going to give you everything you need to place bets on live games as well. When you get that tingling sensation in the middle of the game that you know it's about to change for the better, you can now check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more from the same page where you're already placing your bets from. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can get started with 150 bones back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. Make sure that you go to FanDuel.com. Do not miss out on your opportunity, nor miss out on that tingling sensation ever again. Make every moment matter more with the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So now we shift a little bit to the conversational piece of the Board of Regents meeting. There has been, some sprinklings here and there about Gundy potentially getting fired. And yes, it is a possibility. I would still view it as like a 5% possibility, right? So there's a 95% possibility that this next emergency meeting is to kind of discuss reallocation of some of the funding and where some money should go to replace, Dunn and Nardo and some of the other coaches that are likely to be part of this little issue that we have at this very moment. Now, as it pertains to Mike Gundy directly, this is a football-only, Mike Gundy-centered conversational piece for this Board of Regents meeting. Now, I've been told there is some animosity amongst the Board of Regents, and it dates back to some stuff that transpired during COVID and some issues with taking a little bit of a pay cut, but not enough of a pay cut. I don't know the entirety of the situation, but I do know that there are a handful of people that, I don't know, might be somewhat excited to see Mike Gundy be brought down a couple pegs. And I think by process of elimination, this whole thing is going to be designed to bring Mike Gundy down at least a little bit. He's still the GOAT. He's still the greatest of all time to do it in Stillwater, America. It's going to take something absolutely wild for it to be surpassed. But I would imagine that Mike Gundy's even starting to understand that the crown for the king doesn't fit the same way it did entering this season or entering 2022. 2023 was great, but when teams figured out how to stop Ollie Gordon, they also figured out doing the same thing, almost the same way would stop Alan Bowman. It caused a lot of chaos. But more so than the 2022 ordeal and the beginning of last year and the totality of this year, I mean, if you even want to go back to some of the 2020 Chuba Hubbard stuff, you could, coupled with some of the conversational pieces. Again, some of what Mike Gundy says, I absolutely love. But regardless, from a national perspective, the conversation about the DUI driving and, his shots at the fan base, obviously that stuff's not going to sit well. And if you've rubbed some people wrong in the past, eventually you're going to have to likely answer for that scenario. So this Board of Regents meeting is likely to discuss some of the financial things that are going to happen inevitably with some of the firings and potential hirings and what it's going to look like. But if Mike Gundy were to throw a massive hissy fit and flex his muscles to an unexpected degree, then it could get a little dicey. Now, again, I don't expect that to happen. I do expect them to at least have a conversation of restructuring, not only the monetary side of things, but his contract in general. I personally think he should be on a 1-year deal, right, that has a clause in it that's predicated upon production, right? But that's likely not going to happen either. So kicking him back to a 2 or 3-year deal makes a lot of sense. And maybe Mike Gundy has no reason to restructure or reallocate anything, but I'm sure that he's felt at least enough of the pressure from a Chad Weiberg and Dr. Casey Schrum to not push this thing too far. He could, and if he does that, I would imagine that there's not enough votes right now at all to get rid of Gundy, but if he makes a stink of things and he makes things unnecessarily difficult on everybody, then it could get crazy. Crazy enough that somebody would come up with like $13 million. It's a possibility. Is $13 million enough? No, it's not. But if you have 13 mil, getting an extra, 10, 11-ish million might not be too terribly difficult. Could it put us back in some areas? For sure. All of that just to say, I don't think this meeting's going to do a whole lot, but it could. It definitely could. That's going to be on Mike Gundy's shoulders. How far does Mike Gundy want to push the envelope? I would imagine since he's, reluctantly fired some people already, he understands that there's going to be a different lay of the land now. Him being the ambassador that goes out and helps in recruiting and goes on the ESPN, Fox shows, all that stuff, that should be vital for Mike Gundy. And it's vital for Oklahoma State. But some of the other things, the daily operating procedures on who is, going to be starting and who's going to be playing quarterback and what kind of offense we're going to run and what kind of scheme we want to see defensively and what kind of system we want to morph it into. All of that stuff should be on the people that we hire. And I think Mike Gundy is starting to understand that he's not quite as invincible as he was coming into the season. And again, I know you cannot get rid of somebody, nor can you completely restructure off of one bad year, but it's not just this year. It's 2022 and the division that happened in the locker room. And then it's after all of that, right? When Mike Gundy, in my opinion, put his back against the wall and gave everybody the double birds and said, I'm not firing anybody. I'm not changing nothing. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. Hold my beer. I'm going to bring in Brian Nardo, right? Which I thought was going to work out well. I love Nardo. I love the former players that have worked with Nardo and coached and played for Nardo. But, it is what it is. And it didn't work out. Just like putting his back against the corner and telling everybody, F you, Casey Dunn is going to be great one day, someday. It just, it didn't go well. It didn't go right. And there's no denying, whether you're a donor, a casual fan, or a fan of a different school, there's no denying that this season was a massive waste of NIL money and retention of talent, retention of staff. We just pissed it all away. And it was because it was too comfortable. People got too complacent, and they thought that a bunch of, 36 upperclassmen was going to run everything by itself. And maybe it would have if he'd put the right people in charge. But it didn't happen. So Mike Gundy is likely going to play some more ball here, or it could get kind of wild for him. Now we get to finish this thing off here with the domination station that was Cowboy basketball and Cowgirl basketball. Guys, this was going to be a big day for Cowboy basketball because Brian Montanati and Jalen Montanati were going to be on hand, and the Cowboys win by 21, which is not only good, but the way that we went about it was absolutely phenomenal. This is precisely what we needed to see, and I hope it was exactly what Brian Montanati used to see. And we were able to have multiple double-digit scores. Bryce Thompson had 15. Abu Usman. There we go. I can speak English. He chipped in another 13. Marcellus, Chichi, Avery had another 11. We had a really good game plan. And Tulsa was able to hang tough for a while. But the defense, the amount of turnovers, and we get 36 points off of turnovers, that is what equaled this W. The fight, the grit, the determination, the ugly, dirty, nasty style of offensive lineman you want is the same style of basketball that Eddie Sutton used to play. That's the same style of basketball that Steve Lutz is bringing in. We've said it before. We don't have the most offensive firepower ever. We don't. But we do have more than enough to be a problem for the Big 12 this season. And our defense is going to keep us in games that we maybe shouldn't even be in. And it was nice to see the women get on the court in Galgaraiba with Jacie Hoyt on the sidelines again and get another absolutely dominating performance. Goodness me. I really can't speak. And Staley Hurd dropping an almost 30 burger, going 7-7. That's pretty impressive stuff. And it's phenomenal to see. Hopefully, we can continue to raise the bar for Cowgirl basketball, continue the excitement for Cowboy basketball, and be excited about this recruiting class. Because last year's class was good, better than the number. So if this year's class is anything like last year's class, we're going to be in pretty good shape. Alrighty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. Also, real quick, got word that we just passed the 500,000 views mark last week, and we also won podcast of the week with the whole Locked On network. So that's because of you guys. Shout out to the regulators and my podcast and people out there. Because of you, The bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, funny stuff, funky stuff. You're all of it. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. All righty, y'all. Later, my taters.